Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Anna Smith, and I'm the representative for Cambridge City Council and Deputy Mayor of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. And I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who have joined us today in Huntingdon, and also to those who are watching our meeting on our live stream. Now, the Combined Authority does allow filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones and other devices to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all move to the muster point, which is in the High Street. And I'm going to rely on Councillor Wakeford to show us exactly where we're going to be mustering for that as the representative for Huntingdonshire. And I will remind members and officers that this meeting will be recorded. I wonder if just before we start, for the benefit of everyone watching, we could just go around the table and people could introduce themselves. So, Nigel, would you like to start?
Yeah, Councillor Nigel Simons from Peterborough.
Councillor Chris Seaton from Fenland District Council.
Councillor Alan Sharp from East Cambs District Council.
Councillor Neil Shaler, Vice Chair of Highways on the County Council.
Councillor Sam Wakeford from Huntingdonshire District Council.
Thank you. We're also joined by a variety of officers who I'll introduce as we go through the meeting. Now, our first agenda item is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. So do we have, first of all, any declarations of interest? And a reminder that you can declare interest at any time if anything comes up. Now, would the Democratic Services Officer please report any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had apologies from the Business Board representatives, Rebecca Stevens and Andy Williams, and also from Councillor MacDonald.
Okay, thank you. And we're just welcoming Mayor Dr. Nick Johnson into the room as well. Welcome, Nick. So we're now going to move on to item 2. This is draft minutes and action log. So part of item 2 is the approval of the minutes of the Transport and Infrastructure meeting on the 14th of June. We are being asked to confirm these as an accurate record. If any member wishes to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes, can you please raise it now, Councillor Seaton?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, it says on here that I was not attending the meeting, and in fact I was. So I think it's been missed off there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll make sure that's changed. Is there anything else on that? Okay, so I will take the minutes as approved, and I'll just make sure I sign the minutes and not the Chair's briefing note. Okay. Those have been signed as an accurate record. We now move on to the action log. Please note the responses for 2 of the actions to last month's meeting. These actions will now be closed off and the remaining actions will roll over, and any actions that arise from today's meeting will be added to the log. Are there any questions or comments on the action log? Okay, thank you. So we're moving on to item 3. My understanding is that there are no public questions. Is that correct? Well, rolling through this. So now we move on to item 4. This can be found on pages 8 to 13 of your paper packs. And this is the Place and Connectivity Directorate monthly highlight report. And we have Steve Cox, the Strategic Director, to present this report. So Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. I'll take you through just brief highlights from the report, which I'm sure you've had a chance to look at, and any questions at the end. Very happy to answer. So just going through the paper in order. So we had a visit from Active Travel England on the 21st of June, a really successful visit that was hosted in Peterborough. a strong collaboration across all partners around active travel and the importance of it. And I think Active Travel England went away with a very strong impression of our commitment and our opportunities for joint working with Active Travel England going forward. And some of the areas where we might do that are included in the report. We had on Friday some TIC members and others were able to join the Rail Summit on Friday of last week at Cambridge North Station. A really positive event, really showing the commitment across a range of public and private sector partners to the issue that we're all committed to finding a solution to, which is the Ely area capacity enhancements. And the consensus, I think, from operators, businesses, ourselves in local government was absolutely clear. And the prospectus that was produced as part of the session on Friday, I think, captures the key measures and improvements that we want to see, but also the statistics that sort of underline the business case for Ely. There is a follow-up to this, which is was made on the day, which is to ask as many people as possible who were there, invited, TIC members and others to sign up to a letter to go into government that captures what the case for Ely is, and hopefully TIC members will be able to, I think it's come round today, to ask for you to sign that letter as well. And we've had an excellent response from a range of partners to that. So the others may want to reflect on that when I finish my introduction. There was also an all-party parliamentary group on the same issue held in June, which I think further reflects the consensus that there is for the importance of finding a solution to Ely area capacity enhancement. Flagged last time, the meeting that's coming up now next week with the Chief Executive of the National Highways, and we'll report back on that. We had a good discussion last time on some of the issues, so that was really helpful in shaping the item and the discussion that the Mayor will be having next week with National Highways. On the buses update, so just keeping members briefed on 3 areas of work that are continuing, important areas. I won't go through them all in detail, but BSIP, which is a bus service improvement plan, which is a shop window for how we want to see the bus network improve and some of the measures we want to see in place. Some really good discussion with council leaders over the last few weeks, and that will come back to for member decision in September once we've taken those comments on board. The bus network review, again ongoing. This is looking at the network as we currently have it across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and making sure that through the review of the network, we're able to go into 24-25 next financial year with a network that reflects the priorities that are set out in the bus strategy, and that again will come back to committee for decision in September. And bus reform, otherwise known as the work looking at the outline business case for bus franchising or an enhanced partnership. That work is also continuing, and we're now at the point of receiving later this month the outline business case in draft form that we'll be then asking auditors to look at, and that's an important piece of work that will then continue before coming back to the board for decision. We're expecting that in November. On bus retendering, we mentioned in the update last time that there were 3 services that were being retendered. The details of those now are included in this highlight report, and that process should conclude, that retendering process should conclude for those services to be in place against the timescales set out in the paper. There's also further work looking at the issue of the 36 and the 37 bus between Eye and Thorney, and that the measures that we're taking to find a solution to that, working with a range of operators. I'm happy to provide an update on that if that's helpful at the end of this discussion. 6th District Challenge, the Mayor may want to say a little bit more about this sort of direct experience of getting around the region. and some of the lessons from that. But hopefully it's captured in the update. Cambridge South Station, I think we mentioned this last time. Really great news that has been committed to, funding's been committed, and now is on site for that enhancement and development to be brought forward, which will be a really important piece of infrastructure, rail infrastructure for Greater Cambridge area and beyond. Making connections, just an update on that also provided. There's one of the recommendations agreed by the Greater Cambridge Partnership on the 29th of June is for GCP and ourselves to work closely so that the findings from the technical work and consultation that GCP has found can be shared with CPCA to inform our work on the network review and bus reform, which I think makes a lot of sense. So that's a short update on that. And as ever, Chair, the statistics are really important because they reflect ongoing work that the team do, which is of huge importance to so many people across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. That they're included in the update as well. Happy to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I imagine we'll have a lot of questions on this. I can already see several. Just before I open it up to questions, to put on record the thanks to everyone in the team for all their hard work here. There's so much going on that is really positive and impressive. I personally wanted to just give a particular shout out to the teams that were involved in the Active Travel England visit. It was really incredibly well organised and pretty inspirational, actually. It really was. And a reminder, of course, to all of us, if people feel able to sign the Rail Summit open letter, because that hopefully will really make a difference and show that we speak with one voice from the Combined Authority team on this. So plenty of questions. Menik.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for a slight delay in my arrival. Thank you to Steve from the point of view of the report. Obviously, some huge highlights, which I'm delighted to see the Combined Authority is moving forward with. But you also, I think, very fairly have noted some of the challenges that are within there. However, there's one area that we haven't mentioned, which I appreciate probably came in the timeline where you weren't able to kind of put it into a report. I'm sure everybody around the table would be concerned about some of the proposals that have been put forward in terms of ticketing at railway stations in this area. The more I look into this, and also, as I say, in conjunction with the group of Combined Authority mayors, the potential how these proposed closures could affect accessibility to public transport is, I think not only causes them great concern, but it causes myself huge worries at a time that we're trying to put more and more investment into public transport, be it around the bus network or be it around the rail network. I was just wondering, and sorry to put you a little bit on the spot, could you give me, and I know we have talked about this, so hopefully it won't come as too much of a surprise, can you just give me an update as what the Combined Authority is doing and what we can do? And it's also an open question to members of the board here. Is there an opportunity here for us all to come together and express our concern about these proposals and how we would like to move forward? I'll open that up to the floor, but mostly just keen to know what we at the Combined Authority are doing.
Thank you. Now, I've got some other speakers written down, but I wonder if we might just pause with that question first. So are there any comments specifically on the ticket office when we have Councillor Seaton?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, we are extremely concerned at Fenner District Council about this latest proposal. And in fact, we have drafted out a response which is going to all the members of the CRP, of which I chair, the Hereward Community Rail Partnership, stating how disappointed we are with this possible proposal, especially as with extremely good funding from the CPCA and work by Greater Anglia to renovate March Station, which was only completed at the beginning of this year, the end of last year. Considerable expenditure and investment in there, and then to go and close it, or propose to close the ticket office within months of all that work being done, I think is a ridiculous thing to do, because it would mean that um, the ticket office area would be locked up and closed, and the new toilets have been put inside the building rather than outside, so there would be no access there. And I think it would be a total backward step for the services that we're supposed to supply. Um, and just before I pass over, Chair, I should declare an interest on the earlier part because I am a trustee of the FACT charity organisation, which provides some of the bus services within Fenland. So I need to declare that interest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in on the rail issue? Neil, sorry, Councillor Shaler, and then Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the closure of ticket offices and loss of that particular part of personnel. It's at a time when we should be expanding the access to rail, and this means attracting people who might not be familiar with systems. So again, showing people the ropes. It's just the wrong time, and of course for access for people who might not have standard ways of interacting with machinery. So for many reasons, I think this is a terrible time and a backward step. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Not to labour the point, but I agree with Councillor Seaton and Shayla completely. I mean, here in Huntingdonshire, from what we understand, both Huntingdon and St Neots station ticket offices are proposed for closure, and despite the suggestions that there wouldn't be direct impact on staffing initially, I'm happy to stand corrected, but as I understand the legal position, there wouldn't need then to be further public consultation in the event of reduction of staff at stations again either. So I think it does make sense to see these as a whole. I think it's even more extraordinary and inconsistent for there to be this national push ahead of trailed but not acted upon steps to simplify ticketing. I have in the past commuted daily to London. I still travel on the trains for work. Consider myself a reasonably experienced user, and I still struggle with the differences between off-peak times, which can vary depending whether you're doing a day return or a return later in the week. So particularly the accessibility concerns for more infrequent users, and those with particular barriers booking online and so on in advance. And it is completely against the wider strategic approach that I think we all agree with around, as Councillor Scheller says, moving people onto public transport and away from the roads. So we absolutely would support any effort by the combined authority to articulate concerns on our behalf as well.
Councillor Simons.
Yeah, I'm happy to echo most of them comments. I mean, it's crucial we have personal interaction at stations. Now, whether that's a ticket office or whether that's a person. I mean, I travelled to London this week, and I on the underground, and there was a person there helping with the tickets. Very, very helpful, I must say. As long as we've got that facility, and I think it's important we have that. I think I'm not too despondent with the ticket offices as such closing down, but we need that personal interaction. That is crucial.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've not discussed this in detail, I must admit, at East Cams. And I used to commute into London for 10 years from St Neots and know the issues that one used to have with that. Yes, it's trying to get a balance. Obviously, if people are booking online, as I tend to do now, then that's okay. But there are obviously a lot of people who don't know exactly what their trip's going to be and how the ticketing operates. So I think Councillor Simons is a good point. It's not necessarily the tickets office; it's having individuals there who can help people when they've got an issue is so, more important. Probably it's the actual people to ask questions of and help them. So yes, it's a concern, especially as we're trying to expand rail use.
And I will pass over to officers, I promise, but I just wanted to add a couple of concerns that I have that we could address potentially as well as part of this. So I know that we will have been asked as a statutory consultee to respond. It will be really good to hear what we're planning to say. And clearly, I think we have things that we've said in this committee that we would like to be reflected there. And I wonder whether we're at the point where we're able to agree that we wish to express concerns from the committee on this, but we can, if anyone has a worry about saying that, just obviously raise your hand and we can talk about that further. My particular concerns are this is a 3-week consultation, which seems incredibly short for something this important. It's coming into the summer where not everyone is necessarily watching what's going on in this way. So it's 3 weeks at not a particularly good time. But just to echo what Councillor Shayla's been saying, the equalities issue for me is deeply concerning. And it's been raised already. A lot of people don't need a ticket office, but those people that do really need it. And not all tickets are available on the machines. There is a large sector of our community who cannot access online provision. And obviously, it's more difficult if you're arriving at the station and you want to grab a ticket quickly and your ticket is not available. I'm very concerned about whether the rail companies have done EQIAs on this, to be honest. And I'm concerned about whether this is even something that they should be doing if they have not got an EQIA already. And the other concern I would wish to raise is a safety issue, the issue of the safety, particularly of women and girls at stations, if the stations are unstaffed, and the impact that potentially could have, and particularly picking up Councillor Wakeford's point around whether in the longer term this might be the start of more people being taken away from stations. What does that mean for toilets? What does that mean for waiting rooms? What does that mean for all the facilities that we need? And Councillor Seaton, I think particularly that point about the money that we have recently been putting into station enhancements to suddenly find ticket offices being closed is quite shocking, actually. So I think we're in danger of an outbreak of an agreement here, but let's pass on to officers to give us some comments.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'll kick off, and then Tim may want to come in. I think unanimity around the committee is really clear, as it is across the M10, the mayoral network, and I'm sure beyond that as well. So I think there's some questions that we still have about, where a closure is going to happen. Are there going to be reduced hours? And also, are there any that are going to remain unchanged? So we just need to get more information. And as the chair's quite rightly pointed to, have EQIAs been undertaken by operators before reaching these decisions or proposing these closures? What I can suggest is that we capture the key points from today, if that's helpful, share them and give TIC members an opportunity to add any further comments or concerns that you want to express, and we can feed those into the response that we're going to make to this. And we can actually do that through a letter ahead of the 3-week timeline, if that is helpful for members to reinforce and emphasise the points that everybody's made. And I'm sure the business community would probably share those concerns as well, and we'll look to wrap in their views and comments. So, yeah, thanks for the views, and suggest that way forward if members would like that.
And then just to add some specifics is Matthew Lutz from my team is leading our response and has already been in touch with some of your officers. So I know you've been in touch with Wendy at Fenland, but actually he'll be in touch with all of your officers across the board to make sure that from a technical perspective we're reflecting their comments. So we'll do it at 2 levels. We'll do it at a technical level, but also we'll make sure that everyone on the committee can see our draft response.
And do I get the sense that there is general assent around the room for us to record that as a committee we are deeply concerned about these proposals? Okay, I think we can get that recorded as well. Yeah, let's do what we can, basically. Very concerning. Now, are there any questions or comments on the rest of the agenda? We have Councillor Seaton, Councillor Shayla, Councillor Wakeford, Councillor Simons. I'll take them in threes again if I can, unless they're very detailed questions. So, Councillor Seaton first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last several months, there has been a a meeting on the buses held in Cambridge, and then last week one on trains. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're always talking about integrated services. And yet, each of these meetings, I don't think we've had the bus people at the train meeting or the train people at the bus meeting. Now, there may be a very good reason for this, but it just seems to me that it's a missed opportunity. So it's a question I'd like to pose. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shaler.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I could absolutely echo Councillor Seaton's. And on the train summit was very, very positive and so obvious. And of course, including the link to Wisbeach that, you know, should be in the system. And again, not dependent on the Ely area enhancement, but clearly part of it. It's about a network. And it just seems such a no-brainer. My specific question is quite short. Do we have any update about the 5666 routes in East Cams that look to be under threat? I'm not sure if we have any response to that now, but I thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Could I add a question to touch on the 36 as well, please? That's obviously not in my district, but we were on the sharp end of the implications of the current approach to buses, for want of a better phrase, end of last year when we faced losing routes in similar circumstances, including the critical connection to our market town of Ramsey, which the Combined Authority was able to save. So I'd be keen to understand that. And on Councillor Seaton's comments, I agree as well around the logic of bringing the wider sort of transport family into rooms. What I'd say is my feeling around the bus meeting, for example, is that it was still very significant progress in the right direction in having the sort of the different operators for passenger buses, the county school bus people, the health bus people, for want of a more elegant phrase. So getting stakeholders to look for possible logic and efficiencies in the system was helpful, but absolutely you can extend that logic to say we should be looking at public transport in the round. And again, I think that is the approach covered in the update here. And forgive me, Chair, just to note, I think that the breadth of work encompassed here is across the full gamut of transport experience of our residents, and also as Mayor Nick made reference to in the skills committee meeting here, was it last week, also is critical in underpinning a lot of the wider work of the Combined Authority and our constituent councils as well, in terms of that transport factor enabling travel to education, to work, to skills opportunities. So it really does encapsulate the breadth of the CPCA's work for me. So thank you to the team.
Tim and Steve, do you think you could cope with one more question that I put on them so that we can take the batch of 4 that are currently there? Councillor Simons, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Seaton's quite right. It should be a joined up approach. I absolutely 100% agree with that. And thank you, Councillor Wakeford, for bringing up the 36. That was what I was going to bring up. That service ends on the 31st of July, as we're all aware. Obviously, April 24 is no good. I think we need to see Fleet of Foot. I mean, obviously, we're getting short on time now. So if we're going to work together and at least find some interim solution to this, I'm happy to work with, obviously, PCC, the parish councils, and obviously Combined Authority. I think it's, I'd like some answers on that, if I'm honest, because we need to really, the residents, it's no good as 24th of April, 24. That's no good to anybody, is it?
Thank you. I suggest what we do, if you could cover off the first 2 questions first around the joined up approach and it's the 50, 55 and 66, isn't it? And then I think we'll take the Route 36 after that, because I think that might have some more conversation at the end of that. It might have the most questions coming out of it. So let's take it in that order, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pick up the Councillor Seaton's point, and then I think Tim will pick up on the bus services. Yeah, really important point. And actually, we've had the buses meeting. There's also been the rail summit. There's also been the Active Travel England visit as well. So there are many different sort of strands. Each had its own purpose. Particularly on the rail summit, I think about Ely, but the points were made at the rail summit about integration with other public transport services, and the point about buses was made last week as well. So it's a really important point. So I think we'll take that away. I think we'll need to look at how we can then bring that together, and maybe another summit later in the year is a way of sort of getting the key messages that have come out. And if we want people to be using public transport, which we do, we need to make sure that it's made as easy and as affordable as it can be, and as accessible as it can be. So an integrated approach is definitely what policy is all about. But let's have a discussion about it as well. So we'll take that away as a really helpful comment. Thank you. I'll perhaps pass over to Tim on the bus services.
So yes, if I cover off the 50, 56 and then 66, then we'll go on to the 36 after that. So just in relation to the 50, 56 and the 66, I'm happy to say that we believe we're in a position that the services will continue. We've been through the appropriate procurement process. I can't yet announce who it is because of the where we are in that process, but ultimately, I think in the course of the next week, we'll be able to say who the new operator is of that service, and therefore, but we are happy to say that those services will continue in Finland
So-
going forward.
So just to check, we do have operators. We can't announce who they are yet, but
Yep.
that service will continue.
Yep,
That's really good news. Thank you.
and then as soon as we can announce that, I'll inform the TIC members of who that is, etc. That you hear rather than necessarily it coming out via other means. So we'll send that around to this team, into this group. Do you want me to go through the 36? Yep. Just in relation to the 36. So, just by way of background, before I go through what we have been doing as a combined authority, I just wanted to outline some of the process around some of the timeframes. So when the local bus services were drawn, as in the case of the commercial service in the 36, we have a 70-day period for the notification. The initial 28 days of that period gives the local authority time to consider the impact and variation and calculation, and decide if we need more information, etc., from operators. But also, it's basically a standstill period for the first 28 days. They allow for operators to sometimes go whether they think it's the right thing and then go back on that. But ultimately, that first 28 days is about information gathering. So once we were informed by Stagecoach that the route was going to be withdrawn, we have considered whether an alternative bus service could be used to plug the gap. We've spoken to PCC and officers around some of that going forward. We've listened to the feedback from the community around the loss of the access to medical facilities in Eye and Thorney. That's a key element of the loss of that service. We've requested pattern decisions from Stagecoach for who that travel between Thorney and Eye to understand what the demands are, and at what time open points are, because actually it may be at certain points of the day it's more patronage, etc. How do we help to service that going forward? We've contacted Community Link to clarify whether they'll be able to provide journeys between Thorney and Eye to help bridge that gap. We've contacted First Bus to see whether they would amend the XL service to include Eye, so that Thorney residents could use that. And we've been informed, but my bus service manager has informed me that First had come back to us and said that they wouldn't welcome that the way forward. So First Bus would not divert their XL to help take that forward. We've also contacted Stagecoach to understand what the cost to restore the existing service is, and just so we've been doing some of that work. And also, my bus service manager, gone on a site visit to understand actually the nuances around some of it as well. So we actually, so rather than sitting in the office or wherever we are, we do understand where we're going on it. But what we are currently doing is developing a plan to look at a survey to run between the two villages, and we're going through procurement on that and understanding what the costs are, making sure we've got the budget available within etc. going forward. As we develop that plan, we will obviously engage with PCC officers in particular around what the options are going forward, and then go out with the procurement and making sure that's accelerated to allow us to ensure that a service is in place for the 31st of July. Yes, it is tight. Yes, but what we want to get to a position of we give confidence and certainty for residents that something will be in place. So that's the offer from me and my officers, is that we will continue the conversation with PCC, but we will go through an accelerated procurement process.
So there may be other questions there. I just want to make sure I've got that really clear, because wow, there's a lot been happening and I'm kind of busy scribbling it down. So how confident are we that we will be able to get something in place to save this service so that there isn't a gap for our passengers?
As long as, in my opinion, as long as we get agreement and consensus between our officers and PCC officers, which I'm sure will be the case, and the budget is identified, then the process we can go through an accelerated procurement process, and we can do something along those lines.
Thank you. Well, clearly that's very good news. Councillor Simons, I imagine you want to come back on that.
So that's a yes, was that?
Does anyone else want to come in on that? I don't. Sorry, was that Councillor Sharp on this topic? Mayor Dr. Nick, would you like to come in on that?
To be a councillor here, that's no shame. I just want to say thank you to the team. You know, I'm very well aware of residents writing directly to the mayoral office. Very well aware of residents' campaign, and I appreciate them. I think the fact that we have a narrative where people who are concerned about the bus services, the quality of it on a day-to-day basis, but particularly if there's a potential where it's being withdrawn, I welcome the input that the community and indeed members of the TIC committee have brought to the narrative that the combined authority takes the procurement of bus services, a bus services review, the idea of improvement, and the whole narrative that the combined authority has an overarching responsibility to deliver an improved public transport system. I know, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I am pushing the officers. And I know, and these meetings are of public record, that the challenge in trying to build up the capacity within our organisation is difficult, because to get the level of expertise and to have the amount of people who are available to respond, not just during the week but at weekends, is something that I've asked of the team time and time again. And I just want to say thank you for what you are doing, in particular element to this. We can also talk about other examples of in the Peterborough area, you know, around the communities of the villages around Wittering and what we're doing there, how in the past we've kind of listened and been responsive to the demands, and that's demands maybe the wrong word, the requests of people in Wisbeach with regard to the Tesco bus. And once again, challenged by operators. The system around currently within the bus network is failing us because of deregulation over 40 years. And it's taking a long time, but the dedication of the officers here, and indeed, I would argue, you know, myself, in terms of trying to make good on this, is something that should be a matter of public record. And I will continue to support my officers all the time with the work they do.
Thank you. Now, I imagine there may be a few questions and comments that come off this one. I just wanted to reiterate the thanks for all the work that's been done here. And I appreciate that quite a lot of this can't be put in the public domain until it gets to this stage. But clearly a lot has happened, and very grateful for that. And I would also want to completely reiterate what Mayor Dr. Nick is saying around the system. And I think for both of us, our inbox has got so much correspondence about the buses. It is such an important issue for all of our residents right across the region. And I'm really glad that we are progressing our work on bus reform, that we are looking to continue to discuss that, because these are tweaks. But what we need to do is look at how the system works and see if we can get a better system for our combined authority that really serves all of our constituent authorities and all the residents within it. And that's a huge challenge. And I'm really excited for the fact that we are taking up that challenge. And I know that we will be talking more about that in the weeks and months to come. Anything else on this topic? Councillor Simons.
Yeah, I'd like to put on record my thanks to Nick Johnson for all the work. Obviously, Tim, Steve, and the whole team for this. It's been fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure the residents do as well. I mean, if it's still on this item, I don't know if Nick could give us a quick uh, update of his experience of his 6th district challenge. Just a quick overview. I think we'd all like to know how he got on.
Councillor Sharp, are you okay if we go straight to that one?
That's a dangerous thing to give a politician an opportunity to talk. I'll keep it short. It was in some ways quite well, it was a fantastic event in terms of that it linked in with what was being done at a national level in terms of the Better Transport Week, and from that was one of the things that helped us develop work that we've done around the active travel modelling. But the actual reality is that transport or public transport for day to day experience for our residents, for our communities, is a challenge in Cambridgeshire. And it was very clear because although I was on the way from 10 o'clock, and I particularly thank the High Sheriff of Cambridgeshire giving me a wave off from Wisbeach bus station. It's not every day you get a Dickensian dressed local dignitary waving you off at a bus station. But the fact that the aim was to kind of get back on a plan to the same place, and I had to adapt my plans along the way because reality bites. As I was moving from Trumpington Park and Ride through the challenge of, ironically, a place I know very well, Addenbrooke's Hospital, in terms of the infrastructure there. The bus didn't have its aircon on; it was broken. There was too many people on the bus. It was stressful. There were people getting off. I felt like cattle. If I'm honest, it just so happened that was the occasion. But because there were delays within the system, my connection to take me on to St Ives and the connection from St Ives to then take me on to March and then connect with Wisbeach failed. Now, if I had, been, if there was more pressure on me because I had a job interview, or if I had to get back in time for my kids, as we know, public transport is often, particularly buses, is often used by those who have the least money, and often are the people who are running the family. In terms of women who are, working with, the children, it's just not working. And I appreciate when proposals are put forward about the strategic aims of the combined authority. People often find it hard to believe that the buses particularly can work when it works well, as it did on the first bus journey between Wisbeach and March at the £2 subsidised fare. And I'll go on record, I am grateful that the government has put that sort of forward. I think that there's evidence to say that by having reduced fares, it has encouraged people to come back and use in terms of patronage of the buses. And it's certainly something I think going forward and working with the TIC committee, working with constituent authorities, that's certainly something to hope that as a part of our bus services review, we will continue to make transport easier in terms of one ticketing, and because that was a challenge, how many tickets I had to buy. When I went on to the trains, that was actually more expensive. When we talked about the ticketing office, that in itself was a challenge. So I enjoyed it. I hope it was. I hope it wasn't seen as a stunt because it wasn't ever meant to be. It was meant to be a kind of somebody who has always embraced public transport since I was a kid, and I admit, I liked taking train numbers when I was younger. I've always enjoyed getting the right seat on a bus. I always have that frisson of excitement. But there's some real realities because actually public transport on a day-to-day existence for our communities has to work, and it doesn't as much as I would like it to, and it just reinforced my desire to make sure that we deliver that across the whole of the area. And the combined authority, working with its members, is at the forefront of doing that. So thank you for allowing me to pontificate. It was great fun. It was hard work. It was too expensive. It was challenging. But at the end of it all, it made me realise even more that I wanted to do what I've talked about in the past, improving public transport. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it on this topic? Because I'm going to take Councillor Sharp first anyway, because he's been waiting for ages, and then Councillor Shayla. So Councillor Sharp first, please.
It's a very quick one. It's in terms of the letter, in just making sure that Queen Adelaide is not forgotten. I believe Anna's has raised that with in terms of the community of Queen Adelaide that is will be incredibly affected by the enhancement, which we need. So it's just making sure that that's not forgotten.
Yes, thank you. You're absolutely right. Your leader, Councillor Bailey, has been in contact with myself, and I think copied in you as well. I'll defer to my officers because the issue for residents, as we move forward with the campaign around improving Ely enhancement and Ely Junction enhancement network and all the benefits, it shouldn't be done to the detriment of residents. So I'll hand you over if you want to. Yeah. It's been received, and we're looking at the letter to see whether we can adapt it to reflect some of the local impacts or local issues that arise at Ely. I think we've got to get the balance right between this being a letter to grab the attention of the Chancellor and the Transport Secretary, but they are really important issues locally, I know. So we're looking to get a form of words that reflect the comments that have been made.
Councillor Shayla.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very quickly to thank Tim for the reassurances about the 5666 routes. That's very, very good news. And it touches on something that we've talked about here about our inboxes being full of public engagement, and it's all good. Complaints, everything, it's all good. This is about representation, and so for members of the public, I want to thank them for that engagement and keep it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, as anticipated with such a full report, there's been a lot of debate and discussion of this, which I think is really helpful. I did have one more question actually, which is I had a letter from the Cambridge Area Bus User Forum the day before yesterday, raising some concern around the works on the A1307. Sorry, the A1307 and the changes to routes that would be needed, and they were having some difficulty getting answers from the bus company. And I wanted, first of all, to thank the transport team who I understand immediately spoke both with the GCP and Stagecoach and asked them to work up a solution which will ensure that all the main settlements along the A1307 get a bus service this weekend, which is really good and very good convening work. What I just wanted to ask is that something we can do more of, that ability to convene and to ensure that as a transport authority we are keeping an eye on that kind of issue where people are finding that some works are taking place and they're not finding out quickly enough what's being done to support their route in that situation. Tim, do you want to come in on that?
So I think there's two answers to that. I think yes, it's a critical part of what me and my team do around being a conduit, etc. We try to highlight where issues are, making sure that we get the operator and whoever else is involved to speak to each other. It can be assumed that happened, but actually we need to make sure it does happen, and that partly what we did with the GCP and Stagecoach. But also a part of my role is to continue to liaise with city council, but also county council to actually make sure that we have a joined up view around when work's happening, how's it going to impact on our bus network, etc. So a part of that convening role is definitely something we need to do probably more proactively as a collective three. If I'm being honest.
Thank you, that's great. Councillor Seaton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just going back to the active travel meeting, if I may, which I attended in Peterborough, which was a very good meeting. But my question is, that was very much about the cities of Cambridge and Peterborough. The only rural part was actually the rural areas around those two cities to allow people to get into those cities. My question is, when we'll be having a meeting that will cover the rest of Cambridgeshire Authority, which is the other districts? Thank you.
Yes. So the meeting that was held in Peterborough was of the request of Active Travel England. So they sort of set the agenda for that meeting, and we sort of then did some amendment to allow us to then say some of the issues that we had. I think part of our Active Travel lead's role is to take forward the views around some of our concerns on rural accessibility, rural feasibility, LTM 120 not being appropriate in rural areas, those sorts of issues. So I think part of their role will be to firstly convene meetings with members around understanding your concern, making that get fed into process, and then understanding how we then what's the most appropriate step to get that in front of that Active Travel England. So I think there's definitely a role for our Active Travel lead to convened I would say a workshop, but that makes it overly grand, but a meeting that to go, these are our key concerns in the rural areas, this is what we think they are, and then work out how best we play that in, from a technical perspective, but also maybe from a political perspective. But I think that probably the best way forward, and I'll get Active lead to understand how we do that engagement in the next sort of 2-3 months.
Thanks. And yeah, those of you who know me well know I'm a bit of an avid note taker when I go into meetings, mainly because that's how I remember stuff. So I do have some notes on some of the discussions that did take place during that session on rural issues. But I think what you're meaning is it would be very good to have something that's rural connectivity specific, because absolutely, I think we all share that sense that rural connectivity is vital. Active travel has to work for everyone. So I know we have our active travel officer here in the room who I can also see scribbling away at this point, and I'm sure we can look into how we can extend those discussions because it is so important. And thank you again for the team for that session, because I had intended to come for a short part of the session, and I kept saying to myself, "Oh, one more meeting, one more session, because everything was so interesting and informative during that. So thanks for putting together a very good program. Councillor Shayla, I forgot you. How could I do that? In you come.
Thank you very much. Just to come back on Councillor Seaton's point, I did speak with Active Travel England people, and they are very interested in exactly what you're talking about. Cambridgeshire is quite unique in many ways. And in the UK, we have around 17% of the population classified as rural. In Cambridgeshire, it's 47%. And so Active Travel England were very interested in those connection between parts and rural areas, but also for uh, getting people to appreciate these areas for tourism and various other reasons as well. So I got the impression that they were, even though that wasn't the focus of this particular meeting, they are very interested in this. And so it's something that we can continue to push, I think.
Thank you. And I understand, if I'm right, that there are currently national regulations that make it harder to carry bikes on the back of buses in the way that can happen on the continent, because that really opens out rural connectivity so much if you know that you can take your bike on a bus. So it comes back to that point about joined up transport solutions, doesn't it? If there are no more comments or questions on this one, I'm going to move us on to the next item. This is item 5. This is on pages 14 to 31 of your printed packs. This is the Combined Authorities' proposed response to the National Highway Strategic Road Network initial report. And I think that, Tim, you're going to present this. Is this correct?
Good morning, members. So I'm here to present the update on the Combined Authorities' proposed response to the National Highway Strategic Road Network Initial Report 3, which is a bit of a mouthful consultation. The consultation closes tomorrow. We had a very short time period to turn this round, but we have liaised with the subnational transport bodies of East Inglis and Heartland and Transport East, along with constituent councils. And I'm just going to quickly go through some of the key points, and then the more detailed points are also in the appendix. But overall, we agree with the National Highways objectives, which are outlined in paragraph 3.1. They can closely align to our own objective in the local transport connectivity plan. So ultimately, I don't think there's much of a concern in that area. But the specifics around where I think we do want to draw the attention is firstly around sweating the assets and making the best use of the current network, and then making improvement to the routes that we're currently in place. One example is the A1 to Black Cat to Buxton. How do we make best use on that route? Because ultimately you have a number of junctions where you'd think would be safety concerns. So how do we do that online? Yes, there might be an issue at Buxton, but how do we do that? Similarly, we have outlined with regard to budget. So this goes back to some of the conversation we've already had around the integrated transport, and actually asking DFT and Treasury to think about transport as a whole. So if we're looking at improving east-west connectivity and access to Felix Joe, etc., the priority scheme for the combined authority would be the air capacity. So ultimately, yes, that is a rail scheme, but you could argue that the funding could be sought from the traditional rail and road budget to meet the objectives that are outlined by the national highways. We outlined the number of lorries of 97,000 lorries will be taken off with area capacity. That helps the national highway to achieve their objectives. So you could argue that you could, per se, you could have 250 million from the road pot and 350 million pounds from the rail pot, and therefore will make it a lot more appealing than it just coming from the rail pot. And therefore, that's a view that's supported by the England Economic Heartland, and that's something that we have suggested that government need to look at their pots are more holistically rather than necessarily modal. With regard to performance measures, they should be in place. They should be relevant to the objective. There needs to be a greater focus in our feedback around economic growth, but also rural connectivity and journey time reliability. There's three areas where we think greater monitoring, and then following that, what they do off the back of that monitoring and how they tweak their program is key. And the final thing is around the network need to be future-proof. Decisions need to be made on a evidence-based led approach, but ultimately we need to make sure that the digital infrastructure is integrated wherever possible, so that in 20, 30 years it's still fit for purpose. The final point on for clarity is in some of the in the appendices themselves, it does say that we add comment if you disagree. What we've done in there is to make sure that we continue to say there are some key points that we want to make. It may not necessarily in our final document be in that particular area. It may ultimately be in a summary, but I didn't want to confuse people by saying you say agree and then actually you've written something about disagree. So it just allowing us to make the key point that we want to make in our response. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Shayler, anyone else on this item? Councillor Seaton, Councillor Shayler, then Councillor Seaton.
Thank you very much for that. And I know there's been extensive discussions with highways officers and coming to this in very short turnaround. I want to mention just one. There is on page 20 talking about the aims of national highways promoting active travel. I think they've fallen somewhat short of that aim when it comes to the improvements of the A428 corridor, where they are cutting some of the public rights of way and really haven't been putting in the amount. I know on highways we have asked for them to be at least as aware of these as was done with the A14, and it doesn't seem to have been the case. This is through our consents team, and we seem to have run up against a bit of a brick wall there. So any kind of update on that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. A hobby horse of mine, which I know that most members around here will be probably fed up with, is the A47. And I have long pushed for the opportunity for that road to be dualled, possibly from the A16 across to east of Wisbech. When the National Highways did their consultancy on it to see whether that was viable, they just, from what I understand, just looked at the dangers of that road and the many accidents that have happened. What they don't seem to have taken into consideration, as far as I'm concerned, is the possibility of an economic corridor opening up if that road came in, because that would give opportunity not just for businesses but for housing as well. And I would have thought that must be a very strong case for pushing this forward. So I just wondered where we are with that, and I'm sorry that it's the same old question, Tim, but you do know that I will not stop on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any more questions? You come in on that one. Okay, so let's take those two first.
Yeah, so in relation to A428, I'm happy to incorporate something into the actual response as well around the need to active travel. Just an example with A428, and my view would be that wherever improvements are made by National Highway, they need to look at sustainable transport, but also active travel along if if it's an offline route on the old line and what we do on that route. So I'm happy to put that into the response, and I will seek a feedback from National Highways on what they actually are doing. So I'll do both of those for Councillor Shayler. And in relation to the A47, in our local transport connectivity plan, it does say that we support the improvement to the A47, so that we're not ruling out a dualling. So that's one of the options that we need to be exploring. But actually, there are other improvements along that route. So as part of the option appraisal, and the combined authority, along with others on that route, are looking at well, the A47 Alliance are doing a carbon study on that route, and we are putting funding into that to look at the funding of that, and then following that, we're able to make a more informed decision about where we are. So that I don't think there's anything else to add on that.
Now, Councillor Simons, this is coming back on this one, or should we take Dr. Nick first? Okay, Dr. Nick, then Councillor Simons.
Thank you. In the report, thank you for the report, obviously. I note the sort of 6 points that, that we've got within our LTCP and how that aligns with the RIS3. My observation is, and I hope this is, if I've missed it, please apologise, but under particularly improved environmental outcomes. Bloody litter. I'll say it louder if needs be. Litter around these main routes, which I know is a huge challenge, can be caused by various things. It can be the fact that takeaway restaurants at junctions and people, antisocial behaviour, throwing out cartons along the side, stuff flying off lorries going along these strategic routes. But a constant, it doesn't matter if it's the A47, the A1, the A14, and with the trees on the side and the bushes, it just collects litter. Is there any way within this improving environmental outcomes we can be showing what else we can do to work alongside? I'm grateful for, and I know that we've got a meeting next week with the Chief Executive, Highways England, and I'll be bringing this up, and that's important for me to be articulate from a personal point of view and on behalf of the Combined Authority. But I was grateful there is something there about using, what I say, sustainable tree guards. We obviously had the issue most recently around the A14 improvements and the damage and the lack of success in establishing the offsetting of nature, which I am grateful that Highways England are making good, hopefully in conjunction with county council and indeed constituent authorities, and indeed ideally with local communities. But an actual specific mention of action on litter and how we would work around and work with the Highways England would be appreciated, I think, not just by me, but by nearly everybody who lives in this county. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Simons, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Wakeford. Oh my word, Councillor Shayler, who promises me it's going to be a short question. Right, I'm just going to put, so we have Councillor Simons. What was the order I got? Sharp, Wakeford, Shayler. We'll try and take those a block if we can, and then ask officers to respond. So Councillor Simons first, please.
Yeah, our highways departments obviously agree with council. We're on, sorry. Yeah, I support Councillor Seaton on the A47. PBS City Council Highways Department will be submitting their own report on the A47 and also on the A1 Wittering flyover, just for information. And as Nick says, the litter on the highway is certainly a big issue to me, and I am trying to address that in our region.
Okay, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Just really supporting what the Mayor has just said. I mentioned it at the last meeting as well. I've got a local group, and funnily enough, since then I was on. It's right on the southeastern bit of the A14. I spotted two people actually, or people in yellow high vis actually out collecting, actually resolving it. But I totally support what your views on it. That it's a blight on our roads, and it's something we can do something about, and it just takes So I totally support what you're doing in terms of the meeting next week.
Thank you. And then I think we have Councillor Wakeford and then Councillor Shayler. We'll try and take all those on block if we can.
Thank you. Given the inherently integrated, interconnected nature of transport, in that engagement with some modes impacts other modes, I suspect we'd all recognise that that this is about setting a road investment strategy, but fundamentally, the most efficient investments, strategic investments in roads, can be in things that are not roads in order to free up capacity on the roads. I think Tim spoke to that in that basic observation in presentation of the submission, and the submission makes that point with respect to the Ely area works. So I'm pleased we're flagging that. I guess I'd just urge that we reflect on whether that's a touch subtle, and there's value in underlining the principal point, just for avoidance of doubt for recipients as well. But very happy to be guided as to the most effective way to impact. But I think that point applies right across the board to road investment. Rather than merely in that context.
Thank you. And Councillor Shayler.
Thank you very much again, Chair. On the Mayor's comments on litter, especially litter from vehicles, I was at a meeting of the AGM, actually, of Patrol in Westminster yesterday. This is parking adjudication and various legal forms outside of London. And there was a very good paper presented exactly on this one. So I wonder if officers might look up the Patrol minutes. There could be some very good join up going on there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim, you taking this?
Yeah, so happy if you can send over the minutes. That'd be really helpful to feed into our thinking. And I think most of the comments were around with Mayor Dr. Nick's comment around littering. I think we need to understand who's responsible for litter for the litter picking on the key route, because ultimately that varies along the length of the A14. You would assume it would be the national highways. It is not, and it varies from whichever district or authority area you're in. So I think that we need to go back to national highways to understand who's responsible for the litter picking along various parts of the route. Engage with the relevant authority to make sure that they understand and are aware that it's their responsibility. I think this needs to probably play into the conversation that the mayor can have with National Highways next week, is actually to then understand should the National Highways actually be dealing with this, and actually is it a change of powers that actually they should be doing it, rather than assuming that the whether that's a district council or the transport authority are picking up the litter bill. So I think that they need to play into the conversation that the mayor will have with National Highways, but ultimately we need to understand who has responsibility, the cost implication of that, and making sure that people are aware that that is their responsibility.
Thank you. And it's certainly, to me, that seems absolutely not challenging what you're saying, because I know that's correct, but it seems very odd that Highways England wouldn't take responsibility for that, because these are major routes that span a whole set of councils. And perhaps something that we could emphasise more strongly in our response is that we believe Highways England should be picking up responsibility for that, so it can be coordinated, properly funded, and really effective. We have two comments on that. So Mayor Dr. Nick and then Councillor Simons.
Yeah, Chair, I'm sort of agreement with you, but I appreciate Tim's comments about where this might land. I will be guided to some, obviously I appreciate this response has to go in the next 24 hours. So there's a bit of a challenge about working out the idea. I think it's important to talk about the issue. I guess I was trying to say is what you were alluding to, is that there is a space here where the phrase in combined authorities at the moment, particularly with regard to devolution, is trailblazing. Now, I'm not. What I'm trying to say is that for my money, I think the combined authority could put itself as an exemplar when it comes to kind of some creative working with its constituent members, be they the district councils, be they the county councils, highways authorities. And I think there's something here which, again, I sense from the representatives across the region in this room, there is a sense that this is something we can get behind and work together. So if that nuance could be put down as our response, and indeed even offering ourselves up as a testing ground for this thing as we move forward with new structures around combined authorities, devolution, I would like to see this being the area that people would look to and say, if they can crack it in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, then they can crack it in the northwest, in the southwest, where they have all the same problems on people going down on their holidays who just throw their litter out of the windows. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps we can make a note of that, Tim, to further discuss that suggestion. Councillor Simons.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I find it quite shocking that Highways England are not responsible for collecting the litter on their highways and also weed management as well. Locally we have to pick all that up, and I think I'm astounded they actually get away with it. And I think this committee, hopefully they've got the support that I think we should make that quite clear how we feel about that.
So very much, I think we're getting a sense around the room of our support for Dr. Nick's suggestion that something is done at a national level to change the way this is treated. Okay, very helpful. Thank you. Any more questions or comments on that one? In which case, is everyone happy to keep powering on? We've only got one more item. I can call a short comfort break if people prefer. Carry on. Right. Yes, we need a vote on this one. Thank you so much. This is why we have our officers at the front. So do I have a proposer and a seconder for these recommendations? Could I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Councillor Seaton as a seconder. Going to move to the vote on that. Can I have those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. Ooh, thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So now, Councillor Shayla.
Just to say that the seconder was Councillor Simons, actually.
It was both of them. They
Oh.
they went for it, and Councillor Seaton caught my eye first. So
Quick on the draw, I didn't see which was one.
So now I think we're going to move on to item 6, which is the ITSO approved contracts for English national concessionary travel. And Tim, is that you again?
So this paper is to give to outline some options, and then we're looking to come back in the September to actually having developed some of those options and look for a recommendation about how we take it forward. So the combined authority is the Travel Concessionary Authority, acting on behalf of the DFT for the purpose of administering the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough resident. The scheme provides concessionary travel passes to eligible older and disabled residents, allowing them for off-peak travel on scheduled bus services across England. The budget for the HOPS and smart card provision transfers to the combined authority upon the supervision of the services, and this is a statutory function. And these functions are required by the DFT legislation, and based on a 12-month framework agreement, a 5-year contract is estimated to cost about £550,000. The paper itself outlines a number of options that we are looking to examine how we deliver this going forward. Under the existing contract arrangement, we could extend to from the 1st of April 2024. However, we need to examine what we want to do as a committee and as a authority, and the 3 options put forward in the paper will be coming back to committee in September. So what I was seeking to do is understand your views at the current time around some of the options put forward, and we're coming back with a formal recommendation in September. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments on this one? Councillor Wakeford. Anyone else? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I think this looks really sensible, including considering the different ways the service could be provided. Certainly, I don't have any ideological issue, as in many contexts, with the idea of us contracting to have the service delivered, if that is genuinely the most effective way for doing it, particularly in view of the low workload need, the low capacity if we don't have the critical mass locally. Having said I have no ideological objection, I have plenty of experience, and as colleagues will, in aspects of the public sector, especially where on purely sort of empirical and experience grounds, outsourced contracts can prove in the long run being of worse value to the taxpayer, particularly around things that aren't easily foreseen but that are a consequence. So the idea of us kicking the tires properly on the option of doing it in-house as well sounds sensible, but very, very happy to be open to whatever the most sensible outcome is of that.
Thank you. Are there any more comments on this one before I pass that back to officers? Tim.
So just on Councillor Wakeford's point is part of the option appraisal will be whether the expertise is available, the legislation, the cost, etc. So it will be a wide-ranging review, and we'll come back with what we think as officers is the most appropriate way forward.
Monique.
Thank you, and to thank you, Tim, and thank you, Councillor Wakeford. You were ahead of me on clarifying that point. I just wanted to push a little bit further, knowing about the ambition that I think most of us, or if not all of us, share about this going back to bus service reform, the idea of an enhanced partnership, the idea of franchising, and possibilities of how ticketing arrangements may change then, and also how there might be options to offer up kind of unique to the local area options in terms of subsidised travel. Is that going to be part of your consideration going forward? I know it's maybe putting the cart before the horse in terms of this is what we're definitely doing, but can I get the reassurance that we would be looking at that as part of making sure that we get it right, going forward this year, but also thinking ahead, sometimes if we have to be a bit more unique and kind of brave in terms of taking these things in-house, that it's not something that we just immediately discount, because it actually in the long term, as Councillor Wakeford highlights, it might actually be to the betterment and better value in the long run.
Okay, that work. So whatever we come back with a agreed recommendation around where our position will be, a preferred recommendation will not preclude anything going forward. It will. We need to understand around the statutory obligations that we have with specifically regard concessionary fares and the actual legality around that. But we need to make sure that those boxes are ticked first, and we don't actually preclude whatever we then introduce around ticketing more globally in the area, need to take that into account. But ultimately, we need to make sure we take the point off from the government.
I'm reassured. I think we should do the statutory stuff first. I think I've heard that you'll also, the wider picture is taken into consideration. I think that's an important message. That's reassured me as mayor. Hopefully, it's reassured others that we're thinking further ahead. Horizon scanning, I believe it's called. Thank you.
If there are no more comments on that one, this one is just for note. So there will be no vote on this. So we now move on to item 7, which is the Transport and Infrastructure Committee agenda plan, which you can find on pages 36 to 41 of your paper packs. Are there any questions or comments on this one? There's a cautious Sam. Sorry, Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I was looking cautious because I know we've touched on this in other contexts as well, but I wonder if officers could just remind me in which of these items is bound up the opportunity to move Ting from being a pilot and considering formalising it as a not pilot, as a feature of our public transport landscape, but very grateful for conversations we're having offline with officers around that one.
Other questions? So Tim, do you want to answer that one?
Yep. So yes, I think that we need to bring Ting back to the committee because that links back to the demand of positive transport research projects that have been undertaken. So that needs to be fed into this, and that needs to be reflected in the forward plan going forward. I think there are a number of things that probably we need to, as officers, need to go back and reflect on around the meeting for September and November. Things like that come out of the action log. There's some of those that are not necessarily on here in per se, and maybe think development around the bus network review need to link back to the demand responsive transport. So that probably need to be on there along with the improvement around where we are on the bus depot, etc. So I think there's a number of things we probably need to update the forward plan on just off following the back of this meeting and actions.
Thank you. So I get the sense that the things that are coming up for discussion in the autumn meetings, they might be a little fuller than it looks on that forward plan right now. Thank you for that. So if there are no more questions on the forward plan, we're then looking at item 8, which is the date of the next meeting. This committee is due to meet again on Wednesday, the 13th of September. I believe that there may be some clashes with booking this space, so we are looking both at start times and venues for this meeting, and we will let you know as soon as possible. So the venue to be confirmed on that one, but it will definitely be on Wednesday, the 13th of September 2023. And with that, I declare this public meeting closed. Thank you very much. You may end the live stream. It's on, you can't, that was a really helpful meeting and lots of